You finish training and you've started practicing. And after a few years, you look around and think, is this it? For the next 30 years? Now you feel a little guilty about thinking that because being a physician is a privilege, but still, the thought is there. Is this all there is? Well, it doesn't have to be. Dr. Michael Hersh is a full-time practicing gastroenterologist, husband, father, podcaster, and physician coach at Better Physician Life Coaching. He helps physicians like us create work-life balance, set meaningful goals, manage stress, reduce overwhelm, and feel more present at home and less annoyed at work. He's also the creator and host of Better Physician Life, How to Get Unstuck in Your Medical Career, a new podcast on the Doctor Podcast Network for physicians who feel stuck or out of sync, where real conversations and meaningful topics help us rethink what success really means and start to imagine what else might be possible. You're listening to Succeed in Medicine, the show for practicing physicians who want to master the parts of their career and life that med school never prepared us for. From interpersonal skills to career navigation to the essential information every physician needs. I'm Dr. Bradley Block, and in every episode, we bring you brass tacks advice and immediately applicable insights from world-class experts so you can feel prepared wherever your MD takes you and build a life in medicine that's sustainable, rewarding, and actually worth all those years of sacrifice. Dr. Michael Hersh, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Brad. It's great to be back, and I'm so excited to talk to you.
So let's get right into it, because this is something that a lot of my friends and colleagues struggle with, and that's career stagnation, right? We finish residency or fellowship, and we go into practice, and prior to that, every couple of years would be something new, right? Med school was new, and then residency was new, and then actually your first couple of years of practice, it's new and exciting and interesting, and there's this huge learning curve, and then you kind of hit your stride. And you have this situation like I do where I've got 2 exam rooms, and I finished in 2011. So I've been in those exam rooms for 14 years, right? Seeing the same few problems. And it's a privilege. I will admit that, right? It's a privilege. But you hit your stride and you see a lot of the same things every day, and it could feel like you're stagnating. You might not have that if you're in academia, if you're pushing the limits on what can be done surgically, or you're doing research, right? Or if you own your own practice and you're doing lots of things daily to like run the practice, right? There might be those out there that have these other ways. But for a lot of us, you're seeing patients every day, the same few problems, and it can get a little, I think stagnating is the best word that I can think of. So that wasn't a question, but I've seen you post a lot about this online. I've spoken to you about it. So just please give us your thoughts.
Of course, absolutely. Well, so you and I are about the same. I think I am entering my 16th or 17th year of practice. I'm in the same job that I started out of fellowship. And I remember dating my wife all those years ago. I was still a second-year fellow when we met. And I remember telling her, we need to decide where we're going to live, because the practice I join will be the practice I retire from. I'm just going to be at this practice, which, granted at this point, kind of a ridiculous thing to say to a woman that I'd only been dating for about a year at the time that we had the conversation. But, she's grown to love me despite all my flaws. Anyway, so the same as you, I hit the ground running, built a practice, got super busy really quickly. And then after a while, you start to see the same things day in and day out. I'm a full-time practicing gastroenterologist. I will show up and do 10 or 15 colonoscopies a day, sometimes multiple days in a row. And it's great. And I love what I do. Like you said, it is a tremendous privilege. And there comes a point where you've seen most of the things, you've done most of the things, and then it becomes fairly routine. It's like comparing it to something else that we all learned to do at one point in time, driving. And then at a certain point in time, the next thing you know, you're driving on the expressway and you just know how to get home, and you're maybe not fully focused on what's going on because you know how to do it. And the same thing happens in our career. And so many of us, myself included, get to a point where we just start to wonder, like, is this it? This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, basically, until I retire? And the answer is kind of, right? I think you and I both know that this is what we signed up for, right? So the job that we do is the job that we do, and we are really good at it.
I don't know if I fully wrapped my head around, that's one of the things when you sign up to go to med school, do you really get it? Do you really get what your life is going to be like? And also, our lives are so different, right? Your life, my academic attendings, right? Like someone who's working in rural Alabama, our lives are actually very different. And so you can't really expect to know because you haven't made a lot of the choices that are going to lead to what that's going to be. I know it's what I signed up for, but at the same time, I do know I didn't get it. And so it's not like I'm paying the price and this is a sentence, but are there ways that I could make it more stimulating? Because I just saw this interesting post on Instagram from Dan Ariely, who is actually like a PhD psychologist. He's been on the show before. Actually, one of our guest hosts, John Schneider, has interviewed him on the show. And I heard him talking about how the perception of time is different for kids and adults, right? And he thinks it's because in kids, everything is new and exciting. And you're present for this day at camp. You're present because you're learning stuff in school. I live on Long Island, driving on the expressway for the 10,000th time, right? I'm not fully present for that. And so time goes by in a very different way. And so when that happens in the office, not that I'm not present with my patients, but you get what I'm saying. Like time moves faster in a bad way because we're not fully present. So what do we do? What do we do? Michael, what do we do?
Well, and so I just want to pause on the thing that you said. So we may not have known what we were signing up for when we signed up for it, but we did sign up for it, right? And I think our thought process at the time was completely different because we didn't understand what we were signing up for. And we could talk about medical training and education and the pathway, but the point is that we're here now and this is the job. And, I think if you were to look at me 5 years ago, mid-career, super frustrated, what I would now describe as burned out, although I still don't really like that terminology, but I'll use it for just the sake of discussion. There was not a single part of me that thought, like, oh, you should be an entrepreneur. You should start posting on social media. You should start a podcast. You should start a second podcast. All of the things that I have done over the last 5 years. Now, why did I do those things? Well, because I think so many physicians derive fulfillment and pleasure and joy from the hard work of learning something new. And I found 5 years ago that I was really missing learning things. I had stepped away completely because I had already reached the pinnacle of my career, right? I had gotten through fellowship. I had built the busy practice and I thought I was done. And it turned out I was really wrong because the thing that brought me so much joy and fulfillment was trying new things, failing, which I know that's hard to say as something that brings me joy, but the learning in the process of doing all of these things has brought back so much joy and fulfillment. And so I'm still in the same job that I've been in. I am driving the same car. I live in the same house. I've got the same wife and kids. But the fact that I have leaned into trying new things, and some of those things work out and some of them don't, I think has really been fulfilling to me. I'm going to pause here and let you ask your question because it looks like you want to ask something.
No, my question was more of a smug remark. So it was going to be that like now that you've discovered all this stuff and you said your wife and kids, now they have to listen to you expound on all of these discoveries that you've made about yourself and about the joys of learning and challenge it. They need to hear you. You'll be on long car rides, I'm sure. And you're like, listen, guys, this is what I've been thinking about. Because that definitely happens in my house.
So true. And as I've already mentioned, my wife has grown to love me more and more day by day and who I am and my personality. And literally just having this conversation with my kids, my son, who was taking violin lessons, luckily before we started recording today, was talking about how frustrating it was for him sometimes. And he's 8, by the way, he got an earful about, if you already knew how to do these things, then you wouldn't need lessons. And this is how we learn. And I think it's easy as a parent to explain that to a child. And it's true for us too. Like that never changes.
But we forget. Like it's easier for us to tell them and talk at them, but then not walk the walk ourselves, right? I had this attending when I was a medical student. If you get to SUNY Buffalo, you might know David Sherris, right? At least he was the chair at the time of the otolaryngology department. And you'd be in the operating room with him and he'd say, learning is painful. Learning is painful. And it's so true. Like I see it in my kids' faces when they're trying to do something. And I'm always telling them that really uncomfortable feeling in the pit of your stomach when you're trying to figure out the math problem. Like, oh, it's so, that discomfort is learning. That it's amazing. And it helps to reframe it that way. But I want to step back to this stagnation thing. And so you invented yourself, right? You discovered coaching for yourself through burnout, right? You were suffering from what you thought was burnout, maybe a little different. Actually, for myself, it turns out I wasn't suffering from burnout. I just wasn't sleeping because I had 3 very small children. We had 3 kids in less than 3.5 years, and I wasn't sleeping. So I thought I was burned out. No, I was just physically exhausted. So it wasn't that. But you discovered the coaching and then embraced it, and then you want to spread the gospel. Like, you found your thing, right? And you're clearly very good at it because just in speaking to you about it, you articulate it so well. But for our listeners out there, they know my life is my work, maybe my family as well, if they have a family, but this is not all they want. They want something more, but they don't know where to begin. They don't know if they have enough time, right? Because they're full-time practicing physicians. Is it going to take away from my time and therefore my income, right? Like, I don't even know what I'm interested in or passionate about. Where do I even start? What would you say to them?
I think the fact that they're even asking that question is great, because so many of us just go through our days on autopilot and don't even take a moment to consider any of those things, any of those questions, any of those things that you just mentioned. So the fact that somebody is starting to ask those questions is really impactful, and you need to give yourself a little bit of time to answer them, because so much of the rumination and perseveration that we experience just in our daily life is because these questions are going on in the background, right? We are asking ourselves these questions and we never sit down to answer them. We never give ourselves an opportunity to slow down. And, you know, it's amazing how our minds immediately go to, like, how is this going to impact my income? And how is this going to impact my family? And what happens if I do all of these things that I really want to do? And sometimes it is not this seismic shift that happens, right? Sometimes it is just recognizing, like, gee, I really miss reading, or I really liked learning a foreign language, so I'm going to pick up a foreign language app and do it for 5 minutes a day just so I can get back into this thing that I once really enjoyed. It doesn't have to be picking up and leaving your home or your job. Sometimes it's just like, what do I even like? And am I even giving myself a chance to figure it out?
So for me, when people are like, how's work? I'm like, yeah, work's the same. But let me tell you about the podcast, right? Like, so it sounds like a good way to think about it would be, if someone asks you, hey, how's everything going? You'll be like, hey, you know what? I am starting to learn German, right? So, like, find what it is that you'd be like, I am doing this really cool thing. Because if you think, what would that really cool thing be? You're clearly going to be passionate about it. And if you're not, then pick up the new thing. But it can be, just start off with something that moves the needle only a little bit, but you'll be able to reflect on your day and be like, I saw my patients, made my money, helped some people, and learned 3 new phrases in German, right? So that's what it sounds like. You just need to move things a little bit in one direction, and they might continue in that direction. You might change directions, but at least it's a little bit of a momentum shift.
And I think what you just pointed out is super important. Giving yourself to try something, you know, the physician personality, which I sometimes talk about, would be like, oh, not only am I going to pick up German, but I'm going to be fluent by the end of the year, right? And that's how the physician mind works. Like, not only do I have to do this, but I got to be the best at it. And that is why a lot of times we don't want to try things, because it's like, well, I don't have time to become fluent in German, right? And you don't need to, right? And so how can you allow yourself to learn something new without a ton of pressure, or try something new? And if you figure out you don't really like it, let it go, right? Because so many people also feel like, oh, if I start this thing, I'm going to have to see it through forever and ever. Can you let it go? Can you decide, like, oh, German wasn't my thing, I'm going to pick up French next week or something like that? I don't know. But the point is, can you let it go? Can you
No.
say this isn't for me?
No. If this podcast is any reflection, I've been doing it 7 years, 8 years, maybe. No, the answer is no, I can't let it go. But yes, to your point, I could, right? There's the sunk cost fallacy, right? I've already done X, Y, and Z. So now I have to be able to see it through to the end, because otherwise, what was the point of all that? Well, the point of all that is you figured out you didn't want to learn German. You're going to start on Japanese, right? Or languages really aren't your thing. You want to get really good at making paper airplanes, which is taken over my house currently. Paper everywhere. So just try something with no stakes. And my personal advice, let me know if you agree, don't tell people about it. Don't tell people about it at the beginning, because if you do, that's going to make you kind of more obligated to then let them know how those things are going. And if you decided to change and give it up, you're going to be less likely to give it up and then move. So it puts more pressure on you. You spent years learning how to save lives, but no one taught you how to secure your own. When you work one-on-one with a CFP professional financial coach, you get a blueprint tailored for the long game of your complex situation. At My Financial Coach, they help physicians choose the best strategy to optimize your annuities and investments, implement tax-saving strategies, and tackle debt like your student loans or mortgage while refining your path to retirement. Save up for that boat, a child's college or wedding, or even a vacation home. Plan ahead for the impacts of the unexpected and understand how much life insurance you actually need. Project how getting married, raising children, or taking care of an aging parent affects the progress towards your goals. Advice-only financial planning through a fixed monthly subscription, not commissions, to keep planning unbiased and in your best interest. A financial plan isn't just about your money, it's about your future. Visit myfinancialcoach.com/physician's guide to doctoring to meet with a financial coach and find out if concierge financial planning is right for you. Again, myfinancialcoach.com/physician's guide to doctoring.
Absolutely. When I first signed up for coaching, again, had no designs on becoming an entrepreneur, no thoughts that I was going to be putting myself out on the internet and with blogs and podcasts and all of these things. What was I doing? I was writing a weekly blog post and publishing it to a website that nobody knew about. Why? Because it was safe. It felt easy. I was doing the thing that I knew I wanted to be doing. And I also knew absolutely nobody was reading it. Right. And that to me felt fine. And the more I did it and the more comfortable I got with it, and then people would actually start to find these things, then I realized like, oh, no, I like that part too. And I want to do more of it. Right. And if I never started, if I never decided to start writing down my thoughts, then all of these different iterations of me that have happened over the last 5 years never would have occurred. You have to give yourself an opportunity. And if it feels safer to do it while knowing that nobody is watching and nobody's paying attention, that's fine too.
Comparison is the thief of joy, right? And so when we compare ourselves to some of our colleagues who have decided to take these side ventures, like some of them have gotten into venture capital and they've become extraordinarily successful, or at least it appears that way online. Or, they've gone into real estate and they appear to be extraordinarily successful. Then you end up comparing yourself to them, right? You might decide, I do want to try this thing. But then you end up inevitably comparing, like they're the yardstick by which you end up comparing yourself, right? Like, how do you prevent yourself from doing that? How do you enjoy it just for enjoying it without getting down on the metrics?
Yeah. This is when all of these like sayings and mottos flood my brain, like run your own race. And don't compare your beginning or middle to somebody else's end, right? So
okay, Dad. your son, he's going to be second chair violin, and you're going to be like, you got to run your own race. Like we're all having this conversation. Okay. And that makes sense when you tell it to someone else, but I have trouble making it make sense in my head, right? This is a coaching session for me, as all of my episodes somehow turn into.
For sure. I mean, that's what every conversation is for all of us, right? And I'll just say that is the whole point of figuring out what you like, because this is life, right? Like, you're always going to be surrounded by people who have more or less in different aspects of their lives than you have in yours. And you get to decide what to do with that. You can use it as motivation, as a demonstration of what's possible if you stick with something, if you keep going. But if you use it to beat yourself up, there's nothing motivating about that. And that is not, building a real estate empire, which is not in my future. But if I thought it was never possible for me, guess what? It's never going to be possible for me. You actually have to see that it's possible for other people so that you can make it possible for you. And so we're never going to make comparison go away. You're never going to completely ignore the shiny images on social media about what people are doing or the lives that they're living. And what do you want to do with that information? How do you want to use it to help yourself rather than beat yourself up?
So, okay, let's say we decide to start spending time doing this thing, and then we get really into it, right? And it turns out we're good at it, and it's totally lighting us up, and the responsibilities of this thing increase, and now we've got family life and clinical responsibilities, and now we've got this other thing too, right? And we're finding that it's taking away from those other two things. You talk about life balance over work-life balance. So how do you apply that to that situation so that we know we are appropriately balanced?
Yeah. Well, this just turned from a coaching session for you to a therapy session for me, because what you just described is the life that I'm living, right? Like, I am still full-time practicing. I have a family, and then I built this thing that I love, and that takes up time, right? And so, I have found, for me, anytime we as physicians use this idea of work-life balance, it is a way of beating ourselves up as this thing that we cannot accomplish, we cannot achieve, right? It's this elusive goal of having everything in life perfectly in balance.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I created this image of chocolate milk, right? So there is us pre-medical school. And then for 10 plus years, we're just adding chocolate syrup to the chocolate milk, stirring it up, creating this like beautiful concoction of chocolate milk. And then we get into our 30s, we get to the end of our medical training, we push out into the world, and it's like, good, now go extract the chocolate syrup back out of the chocolate milk. Like, that's not how it works. You can do it, but it's going to take a lot more effort than probably you're willing to put into pulling the chocolate syrup back out. So rather than trying to figure out how do I carve my life away from my work, how do I make this all work together? How do I make the fact that I just spent 10 plus years of my life integrating medicine into who I am, and then make it work with the life that I want to have outside of the clinic and outside of the hospital? And so that really does come down to boundaries. It comes down to figuring out, like, okay, there are going to be times, I think we actually talked about this with the last time you had me on your show. I bring my work computer on vacation. And listeners might be horrified to hear this. Like, well, why in the world would you log into the EMR while you're on vacation? Well, for me, it is so much more settling for me to know that I don't have 3,000 in-basket messages at the end of my vacation. So I would rather, at the end of the night, when my kids are asleep, log on, spend 30 minutes cleaning things up, and know that when I get home, I'm good.
Yeah.
And that's not going to work for everybody. And so that, for me, is an example of life balance. It might not work for you, but it works really well for me. And it's about making those boundaries and those shifts that work for you. And again, if you start comparing yourself with other people, like, oh, well, he went away on vacation and didn't log into the EMR for 2 weeks. Well, that's going to make me feel really bad, knowing that I can't do it. I just decided not to.
If you like this podcast episode, you're going to love the other shows over at the Doctor Podcast Network. For instance, The Scalpel and Sword, hosted by Dr. Lee Nagendran Sharma, a previous guest on this show, who discussed conflict resolution, covers topics like industrial psychology and personal development, ethics, and you guessed it, conflict resolution in healthcare. Check out Scalpel and Sword. Yeah, it's nice that you're able to think of it that way, right? And it's the way that you frame it in your own head. It's the same work, but you're framing it as, I don't want to be inundated later. And someone else might frame it as, oh, I just can't get away, right? Like same work, same situation. Although in one situation, it might be by choice, like in yours. In another situation, it's not by choice. And that's a very different situation. But you're electing to do it to save yourself. So you're finding where it fits. And what you said is after your kids go to bed. And I find for myself, it's funny, I was on a med student podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me about work-life balance, which I still haven't figured out. But just saying it, talking about it, helped me figure out that, one, as we all talked about in the past, it's fluid, right? It's a very fluid phenomenon. But you have certain red lines that you do not let work cross into. And so you didn't do it while your family was at the beach. You were hanging out with them. You didn't let it interfere with bedtime. You were doing bedtime. But after they went to sleep, you could either read a book, watch TV, or log into your EMR. And you chose to take this thing so that it gave you less stress later. And that's what you chose to do. So yes, work-life balance is very fluid, but we also have to have these, like you said, boundaries, these hard red lines, because I can't be with my kids 24/7. I shouldn't be with my kids 24/7. They sleep at night. They have play dates. There are times where they're interacting with each other where I should not be interfering because they need to learn from interacting with each other and their friends. There are times where they need to be by themselves. It's good for them. But those times that I am with them, I need to be 100% present. And so to be with them 24/7 doesn't make sense. To be at work 24/7 doesn't make sense either. But each of them has their place and they can kind of bleed into each other. And I think it's just really important to have these like hard red lines of boundaries to make sure that they don't start like one of my partners once said to me, because it was during preschool. My oldest one was in preschool and we went to some play where he barely did anything. In fact, he left the stage once he saw us and he sat in our laps and we watched it together. And so I was like, why did I miss half a day work for this? And my partner said, if you start missing the small stuff, you're going to miss the big stuff. And so you're going to find a reason to do it. So you can't miss anything. And I don't miss anything. Actually, I messed up and I missed my kindergartner's graduation. So I had to take a half a day off to make it up for him. And we went to the beach and it was beautiful and amazing. But have these hard red lines so that, you don't fall off the balance beam, as it were, to use an analogy.
Yeah. I'll offer something else to the listeners because, I have this past spring, I missed the band concert. I missed the band concert because they changed the date of the concert. I had my schedule protected and then they moved it from Thursday to Monday.
Yeah.
And Monday's my late day in clinic and they changed it and I didn't make it.
Yeah.
And in those moments, right, we can't beat ourselves up. I'm such a bad dad, a good dad would have been there. And I couldn't be there, right? I was an hour away in the suburbs of Chicago and traffic here is just as terrible as Long Island. And there was no way I was going to make it in time. And then I had to remind myself of the things that I was present for, right? The things that I do make sure that I am at. And if I had known the date ahead of time, I would have been there. And this is the other piece of that balance, which is some self-compassion and some grace for the fact that you can't be in multiple places at the same time. And sometimes your job is going to have to be the priority, right? Sometimes taking care of patients is going to need to rank higher than being with your family, and then vice versa, right?
Yeah.
And then at other times, it's going to be your family that takes precedence. And that's the balance that you want. It's not that everything is equal all the time. It's just that everything evens out eventually in a way that you want it to.
Yeah. As long as your priorities are there and the effort is there. Yeah. I was in the operating room that day and I messed up because I didn't check the schedule, and people put their lives on hold for surgery, just like they do for the endoscopies. And you just can't do that to patients. So I didn't cancel my surgery day. There are certain things you just don't cross. And I was totally fine with that because I don't miss anything else, right? This was an isolated incident and my kids know that, right? They know that I'm there for everything and some things are just sacred for us. So I have a question about coaching. Because if you've got a listener that wants to reach out to a coach, right? Because that's what helped you through this. And then found this new thing that takes time away from your family and office hours, right? If they want a coach, is it a career coach? Is it a business coach? Is it a life coach? What type of coach are they looking for if they are not sure where the next direction is?
It's a great question. And the answer is yes. So I have found.
A, B, C, or D. True.
Yes.
Okay. That's something our patients would tell us. You're like, when did it start? And they're like, it's a 10 out of 10. And you're like, that wasn't what yeah. Okay. Sorry. So the answer is yes.
This takes us back to one of the initial conversations that you and I were having here, which is that sometimes just asking the question leads you to the right place. And for me, so I have been the recipient of coaching from a lot of different coaches. And I continue. At the moment, I am in a business mastermind. I also have a physician coach that I work with on a regular basis. And I utilize coaching for different aspects of my life. And so for the listeners who are thinking about it, I think it really all comes down to how do you connect with the coach, right? I find that there are coaches that I have just clicked really well with and they get me and I can see that they get me and I get so much out of that. And then there have been other coaches that didn't resonate very much with me.
Sure. It's like dating.
Yeah, 100%. It is like doctor-patient relationships, right? Like sometimes it's going to sync up really well and other times it isn't. And so it is less so like, what does the coach specialize in? And does this person get what I'm saying? And can I learn here? And I have learned from physician coaches. I have learned from non-physician coaches, and I've had not great experiences with both as well. So it's really about taking a moment, figuring out what the questions that you want to answer for yourself are, and then starting to reach out to coaches. And most coaches will offer you a meeting prior to signing up for anything so that you can figure out, like, is this the right fit for me?
Yeah. So if they're interested in reaching out to you because they want you to be their coach, how do they find you?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So my coaching business is called Better Physician Life Coaching. So you can find me at betterphysicianlife.com. I am also, with your help and the help of the Doctor Podcast Network, launching a podcast called Better Physician Life, How to Get Unstuck in Your Medical Career, where I am going to be digging into topics just like this one and many more. So love for people to listen to that and subscribe. And then on all the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Better Physician Life. So I'd love for people to reach out.
So as of this recording, the podcast hasn't launched yet, but we're actually going to sit on this for a little while until it does. So for the listeners, Better Physician Life everywhere, including on the podcast search engines. That's where you can find him. And Dr. Michael Hersh, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Brad. It was great chatting with you.
Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means either you fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please write us a 5-star review, take a screenshot, and email it to me so I can send you a quick guide on how to earn patient trust in 20 seconds or less. Email me at brad@physiciansguidetodoctoring.com and feel free to suggest a topic or guest. I take your requests seriously. The views expressed on this episode are those of the interviewer and the interviewee and do not represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. Even though the magic of podcasting makes it sound like I'm talking directly to you, this is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice, or financial advice, or legal advice, or really any advice. Thanks again for listening to Succeed in Medicine.